Hi, and welcome to this week's video blog. I'm Sarah Hammerker, and I'm glad you joined me. Today I want to talk about competition among siblings, among friends, cousins. Sibling competition has been around as long as there's been siblings. Some families actively encourage sibling competition. Some discourage all types of competition. Some fall all the way in between. Sometimes kids develop their own competition. It often begins as soon as a new sibling arrives at the home. And remember that not all competition between siblings is unhealthy. For example, my boys, sometimes they would like to race one another. They still compete a lot, more than my girls ever did. So sometimes it can be healthy. But often we inadvertently create competition among our kids when we don't mean to. For example, we often label our children. It's easy to put them in these neat little boxes, the smart one, the funny one, the creative one, the athletic one. Even if we don't ever always say these words out loud, these labels are often heard and understood by our children loud and clear. And that can create unhealthy competition in our families. We also can subconsciously, make our kids want to compete with one another by comparing the competition with one another. And next week I'm going to talk a little bit more about comparison. But here let's focus on the label part of competition. Kill competition with kindness. We should be kind to our children, and we should help them to be kind to one another, like I talked about in last time's video on thinking the best, not the worst of one another. We should also help our kids practice losing and winning. This is essential. Now, some kids are really great losers. Most kids are not. I know that there are a couple of kids that in my family who don't like to lose. And if they find themselves losing, they often start getting upset with themselves. So one way to help your kids learn a lot about losing and winning is to play games with them. But don't make it, make it games that everyone has a more even playing field, right? You're not going to play a game of chess with a 3-year-old. Unless your 3-year-old's a prodigy, then maybe you are. So you might want to play checkers with them. Helping age-appropriate games as a family. We often play games as a family. Games that everyone can play. Things like Parcheesi, where it really is the roll of a dice and tell whether you win. Card games, where it really is there's some strategy, but there's also just cards being passed along. One of our favorites is spoons, where you just pass cards around trying to get 4 of a kind. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's just whatever cards you get. That can be really helpful in helping your children practice winning and losing. And you have to remind your kids not to be gloating when they win either. They can be happy about it, sure, but they don't need to rub it in. And that leads to my next way to lose the label competition is to douse bragging. No one likes a braggart. But kids sometimes can't help themselves. They have to brag. So to help your children not brag, you have to remind them there's a proper way to brag, right? You can be proud of what they did, but you don't want them to brag about it unnecessarily and rub it in their noses and to be all about you. And so you have to be careful that you're not setting that up either, that you're not bragging over one child over another, that you always only talk positively about one child and you don't about another. Also help our kids not to label themselves. Sometimes our kids can go, well, I'm not as smart as so-and-so. I must be the dumb kid. Or I can't hit the ball. I'm not an athletic kid like my other sibling. Let's be careful that our children are not labeling themselves and putting themselves in boxes they don't need to be in. You can help by reminding them that's not how you see them. And you can help by reminding them too that that's not how they have to be. They don't have to be the dumb one just because they didn't get an A on their science test. Maybe they're the writer one. Maybe there's someone else. And remind them that they are not to have that fixed mindset, but to have that growth mindset, that they can be captains of their own will and own ship, and that they can steer it in any direction they want. And also help them eliminate the teacher-driven labels. This is so important, especially when you have kids in the same school. I remember we've had several repeats, like my girls had, and my girls are back to back in school, and there's a gap, and then my boys are back to back in school. So my girls each had the same third grade teacher back to back. They also had the same first grade teacher back to back. And then another one of my boys had the same first grade teacher. And there's been some repeating teachers over the years. And just to remind them, you know, this is a different child. It's easy for teachers to put them in boxes too, and they don't mean to do that in a mean way. It's just easy. That's why there's stereotypes, because that makes life easier for us to kind of get in a quickness. So, but reminding our teachers that our kids are different and why they're different can be very important in helping them not put those labels on our kids. So let's think about how we can not encourage competition in an unhealthy way in our homes, and also help our kids when they naturally want to compete. You know, we often remind our kids, because they're about 2 years apart, and sometimes those 2 years are a huge difference. And to remind them, you know, your brother isn't in 6th grade right now. He's only in 5th grade, and he's also almost 2 years younger than you. So competing with him on this is maybe not a good idea. Or the child who feels like they're behind. Well, remember, your sibling is older than you. This is why you're not getting it quite so quick. So let's help our kids develop healthy competition habits, and not ones that can make them are not good for them. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you join me next.